8:34 says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." Hello, I'm Bobby, the pastor of Lighthouse Church and Online Ministry, and I want to welcome you to another deep dive video on the Sermon on the Mount. And reason why we do these videos is because Sermon on the Mount, which Jesus preached, it's considered not considered, it's the best sermon ever preached. The Sermon on the Mount gives us a foundation and a background on how Christians should act. And honestly, what it shows us is a Christian should act in a way that is countercultural to the world. And even today, it tells us that we need to live a world that is countercultural than to the secular world. And we're going to see that in today's verse. And again, in Matthew 7, Jesus is really wrapping the Sermon on the Mount, wrapping it up, finishing it up. This is really his conclusion to the Sermon on the Mount. But it also brings up the fact that, again, we need to live a life that is countercultural to the world. And so let's look at Matthew 7, starting verse 13 and 14. And it says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many, for the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." So what we see here is really Jesus is being very blunt. And he says, there is two ways to live life. You can either follow the world, follow the earthly desires, the fleshly desires, which if you do this, the gate is wide and many will go into it. And while you're living this path of following your earthly desires, the way is easy, but it leads to a place of destruction and hell and disobedience. But the other choice is, if you want true life, it's hard. It's the way is narrow, and the floor or the ground is rocky. And so, like I said, Jesus is telling us you have two choices. The easy way that leads to destruction, or the narrow way that leads to true life. And what that means is like I said, Mark 8:34, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." Jesus is telling us that following him will not be easy, but it's going to be worth it. There's this modern teaching of the prosperity gospel that teaches God wants you to be rich and comfortable, and if you're not, you don't have enough faith and stuff like that. But these verses show us that that's not what Jesus preached. Jesus told us from the very get-go that following him is not easy. I mean, John 16:33 says, "In this world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He's telling us that he has already beaten the world, but you will still have hard times. You will still have tribulation. You will still be persecuted. Another place tells us that the world hated Jesus first, and as his followers, they will hate you as well. And then Luke 9:57-62 really tells us why, some reasons why it will be difficult following him, saying, "As they were walking along the road, a man said to him, 'I will follow you wherever you go.' Jesus replied, 'Foxes have dens, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head.' He said to another man, 'Follow me.' But he replied, 'Lord, first let me go and bury my father.' And Jesus said to him, Let the dead bury their own, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God.' Still another said, 'I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family.' Jesus replied, 'No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God.'" And so you just look at these verses, and Jesus is warning you, following him is not easy. Why is it not easy? Well, here are some of the reasons. First of all, we are called to deny ourselves. We are called to go and live into a place of obedience and deny ourselves. And a lot of times we don't realize the reason we have to deny ourselves is because the things we are denying ourselves aren't good for us, aren't a healthy way we should live our lives. And so we need to deny ourselves earthly pleasures like porn and seeking after power, seeking after drugs. And denying ourselves isn't always easy, but it's worth it for our growth, for, living according how God tells us to live. And yes, it's hard to deny ourselves. I've done a lot of recovery meetings. Heck, I've had to deny myself, myself. And it's never easy, but it needs to happen, especially if we want that, if we want true joy and peace. And I'm not talking, peace on earth will come, but I mean peace in your soul. Like I said, denying yourself isn't easy, but it's something that needs to happen. Let alone you will have this true joy, purpose, and hope in your life if you go on the narrow but rough pathway. Enter the narrow gate, for the gate is wide And the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Again, we have a choice. Am I going to follow the rough path that leads to life? Or am I going to go the way of the majority and go on the smooth path that leads to destruction? Like I said, it's hard because we're denying ourselves. There's going to be persecution. There's going to be sacrifices, things we give up, like control, comfort, safety. There's going to be people who won't understand the teaching of Christ and will call us names and stuff like that. But it will be worth it. And I understand none of us want to go through that rocky pathway. But again, it will be worth it. Because you might have some discomfort, but in the end, you will gain true life through Jesus Christ. You will gain freedom from sin, from disobedience, and you will gain a Father who truly loves you and who will never leave you. The gate is narrow. The pathway is rough, but it leads to true life. So I just want to encourage you. One, if you haven't taken that pathway yet, God is offering it to you now. Like I said, it's not going to be easy, but it will lead to true life. And two, if you have and you're on that pathway, continue to follow it out, because you will gain true life. Thank you.